WKA, a station that leaves no listener behind. I am Dr. Marissa, and today we have some very special guests in studio. They are best-selling authors, and intimacy, sex, and spirituality is their expertise. And I've asked them on for future reference. As y'all know, I haven't decided whether or not I really want to be in a relationship. What's interesting is we have people in common. In their book, the foreword was written by my big brother, Michael Bernard Beckwith, who is the one who actually introduced me to Oprah as the Asian Oprah, by the way. So I didn't call myself that. It's his, you can blame him. But anyways, we found that out after their publicist asked if they would could be on the show. So I love that. He says hello. And I told him that you were coming on. Oh. And so, yeah, let's move to this whole field that I am very not familiar with. So I'm going to just repeat something that you wrote as an intro, because I thought that would be a good place to jump off from. And it says, intimacy between two people can be one of the most potent gateways to full spiritual expansion. And spiritual expansion can often heighten the ability to achieve a successful, unconditional state of intimacy. So you are combining three things that may or may not be very commonplace to talk about: sex and spirituality, number one; intimacy and spirituality, number two; sex and intimacy. Maybe that was probably the one where, okay, that makes sense. So help me to do like a beginner's 101. How do you even relate those things, and why is it important?
Okay, so I can't think of anything more spiritual than creating life, and so sex is how we come into this world in these carbon unit forms. So when we bring consciousness, in terms of some of the distinctions that we teach in our work, breath awareness, energy awareness, and intention, like as a meditation, sexual meditation, what happens is we get more unmasked in this intimate, altered state that happens in the sexual energetic, right? So when we're in it, whether we're doing consciousness work or not, we're more open, loving, vulnerable, receptive. Chemically, we're shifted, more endorphin, serotonin, oxytocin, the feel-good hormones. So we're in an altered state. So when we bring consciousness of breath, awareness of energy, and intention, we get more unmasked to what's possible in our life. And that's the spiritual part of it, because we are all, humans having, spirits having a human experience, right? So, that's tapping into something that's primordial in terms of sexual energy was creating life before we had language. So now we're learning how to co-create with this creative intelligence.
Well, it makes sense. It definitely makes sense the way you're describing it. What popped into my head was, when you do orgasm, you do say, "Oh my God," sometimes, or "God," right? So,
yes.
So there is that connection. But sex also, though, is not like most of the time you're not having sex to give life, to have a baby, right? Most of the time, sex is for pleasure or for connection, or something to do, right? So
why not use it as a meditation, sexual meditation? That's something new.
What about if we go a little bit back before we talk about connection between two people, because where it emanates from is within and through each of us individually. It's this life-giving energy that is given to us when we are being conceived, and it leaves us when we leave this planet. So, and none of us has learned about it. I mean, Dr. Marissa, did you have a class in high school in biology about human energy? I didn't. I mean, I learned about electrical energy, thermal energy, nuclear energy, But life force energy, as in humans, I didn't hear about. However, it's the most powerful energy there is because it brings forth life. Nuclear energy is very powerful too, but it cannot bring forth life. So,
Yes.
how would it be to become more aware of that energy that runs through us in subtle form all the time? Otherwise, we wouldn't be alive.
Yes.
And certain moments, when I walk at Lake Michigan and I feel the breeze touching my hand and my arm, I'm not highly aroused, but it's quite pleasant. So that energy has slightly risen. And then, of course, all the way up to a climax on ejaculation, where this energy is very high frequency. And oh my God, frequency, So it shows up in various gradations. And in the tantric practice that we draw on heavily in our work, we can learn how to play that energy like a flute. So we can breathe that energy from our sexual center all the way up into the heart, into our mental being, into our spiritual being, including channeling it into our creative projects in the world.
Forever, we've been procreating with this energy, creating life. That's what it does. The last 100 or so years, as you said, Doc, we've been recreating with the development of contraceptives. And so what we're sharing and teaching is how to co-create with this intelligent energy. When it's interesting because the kernel of it is creativity, it creates life, and it's pleasurable when we're in it. When we bring consciousness to it, what starts to show up outside of the bedroom in the simple process of living itself is creativity and pleasure. So as opposed to like, well, I hate my job, 30 more years of retirement, the cascading effect that those words have on my body, my system, my looking and being in the world are not really feeling very good. I hate my job. Why am I here? What am I doing with my life? So when I'm listening from that place, the frequency of the words that I'm saying, then I start to look at, well, what am I grateful for about my work? Or do I want to change work? So things shift that seem completely unrelated to sex when we bring consciousness in this altered state of the consciousness that happens in the sexual. A lot of people do different things to see something, or work with actionable insights like, plant medicine or, things of that nature, or meditation retreats. But few I know learn how to work with sexual energy consciously.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So let's go back to how you started out the show with the gratitude practice, because that brings us into a certain frequency.
Yeah, that's
that
great.
it's elevated and much more conducive to feeling well, satisfied, fulfilled, all of that. And what Freddie just shared about that, the kernel of that creative sexual energy that is life-giving in nature, when we tune with that, we imbue ourselves with the creative and the pleasure dimension. So just as we practice gratitude, when we practice sexual meditation, it actually imbues us. We cannot be, fussing over our job anymore because it's not coherent. If I'm in a job that is not coherent with my higher state of pleasure and my creative self, then there is an incoherence. So then I look for how can I create coherence. And what we have found both with ourselves and of course working with, thousands of couples and singles, is that when they tune consciously with that life-giving energy and learn to channel it and harness it, connecting with love energy that resides in the heart, wow, what else wouldn't be possible?
Okay. So we're literally introducing some major shifts in the BS belief systems that the average person grows up with, that is not taught, but is unconsciously taught, that what's most important in life is you get good grades at school, you get a good job, you move up the ladder, you make money, you find someone to marry, you have children, Fame and fortune are the key to life, and that's the most important thing. And present-centered, energetic, high-flying, positive human experience as spiritual beings is certainly not taught, as you mentioned, in school or pretty much anywhere else. Maybe you might, if you go to Agape, yes, you'll be taught that. But
That's right.
pretty much everywhere else, it is a material, physical, what can I
Newtonian world.
get?
Yeah.
What can I achieve? What can I buy? Right? And sex is just woman's job to pleasure the man. I'm putting the moose on the table here. My Canadian version of elephants in the room is to pleasure a man. Only in the last maybe 1.5 generations does women's pleasure matter, which is why I had that, last week of the month sexual healing with Dr. Marissa, because I came from, I'm ageless, but I came from that literally, or wasn't coming, sorry. So I like the fact that you're, presenting sex in a very different way and educating people that, like, it's almost like if you have time, you have sex, or if you at the last priority after working at work and taking care of the kids and watching whatever, and then sex and then sleep, right? You're saying that it should be, or not shoulding, but that it's important as energetic beings to put sex and intimacy and conscious coupling, if I can call it that, up towards the top of the scale, maybe not before feeding your kids, but certainly somewhere in the top echelon, certainly not on the bottom when you have enough energy to do it before you go to bed. Is that about right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I want to add to that, just to keep building on that, all the things that we do in this world that you were saying, that, getting our degrees and making money and raising a family and living a happy retirement, all of that's important. And that's really great. And in what we're talking about is not doing that. What we're saying is to bring some consciousness to the sexual so that you can also use that to buoy all of those other things you want to do in your life. Because, usually, as you said, we go to sex with ourselves to feel good for a moment, release some tension, right? Or we make love with our beloved because we're in an altered state for those few moments. The 3-second orgasm. For those few moments, we're back to the beginning, because it starts out, we're in the womb, it's womb service, and we're just floating and life is perfect and there's no worries. And then all of a sudden we're born, whoosh, bright lights, whacked on the bottom. Some guys are getting their wee-wees cut and they're thinking, send me back. And then life happens, all this stuff goes, and, with good days, bad days, sad days, money days, rainy days, sunny days. And then we get to a point in our life where it's like, and we're looking into the world from all of those experiences, right? So that's the clay that we are, I call it. And yet we have this idea, this dream of something that's never been before for ourselves, some new way of living or being or something we want to do. And that's our connection. That's our connection to the universe that goes on forever, is our creativity and imagination. Beautiful. So to tap into that, what we're teaching is how to work consciously with the sexual to get some distance from this clay we look into the world from, so that as a curious witness of ourselves, to move with grace, ease, and flow towards that thing we most deeply desire without worrying or doubting or not believing something can be so. So this is the way we can shift and create our life in a more happy, fulfilled, authentic way. I'll share a little bit at some point about how I got introduced to this, because that's been my lineage from early in my life.
Why don't you tell us?
I don't know.
I would love to hear it. But before we do, I've ignored our cashew gallery. So I want to just put up Orville Nation. PJ, my friend, is big on the topic with Bob Proctor, who I'm sure you are familiar with. He was a guest on my show as well. He's actually the reason that I connected with PJ. PJ reached out to me and asked if I could get my big brother, Michael Bernard Beckwith, to be a presenter of the Lifetime Achievement Award in New York at Carnegie Hall. Wow. And that's how I met PJ, because I did covered the event, and the rest is history. That was years ago. So Bob Proctor was certainly someone who spoke to these things through, I think, maybe in the Napoleon Hill Think and Grow Rich aspect of that. Just a guess, is Elizabeth a fan of Rudolf Steiner? Do you know who Rudolf Steiner is?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so is that a yes?
Yeah, I have nephews and nieces who went to the school. I went to kindergarten, Rudolf Steiner. It's the Waldorf school tradition that really was, invented, founded by Rudolf Steiner. Yes.
So interesting. Okay, so let's go back to the story. Did you
Okay,
know?
you mentioned Think and Grow Rich, and so in our book we mentioned him because Napoleon Hill, he in his book said, "Lucky is the person who can learn to use their sexual energy to create wealth." That was his thing, getting you to believe that you could be wealthy, and he was very successful book. He didn't tell you how to do it. Now we do. And it's not, it could be wealth or a relationship or whatever else you want, because you can use, again, your sexual energy to shift what you believe in the world, how you are looking into the world, and continue to fuel your creativity and your pleasure listening and alter your whole state of experience as you go through your life.
Okay,
and we do that unconsciously. So I was first introduced to these practices when I was 13 years old, living in Hawaii, going through my puberty, spending a lot of time in the shower, like a lot of guys are at that age.
okay.
My father at the time was a practicing psychiatrist. He took pity on me and gave me a book to read on how to integrate sex and meditation, sexual meditation. Wow. Well, I loved it. My girlfriend loved it. And even more than that, Doc, I had this idea, this dream to go on to college on athletic scholarship, but didn't believe that I could get the recognition or the training or coaching in Hawaii. Well, the practices shifted me from believing that to believing that I could, and I did. And I did go on to college on athletic scholarship. And after college, I was in the software business for a long time. I continued to do these practices, read books, and apply these principles in my personal relationships. And after about 15 years, it was just a job, but I was looking for reinvigoration, and I took a job in Chicago, and I met Elspeth, and we met, and that was 22 years ago, and we started this work, and that's what we've been doing the last 22 years.
I think he came here to meet me. He just didn't know it.
That's right. Intuitively, I was being led.
Interesting. So I'm going to get nosy. You tell me when I can't ask questions about your past. But so from the shower, right? And so you're already steeped in this stuff, and so you have a good reason to have sex, right? You have a good reason to be physical, and you got married. Did you have children?
Oh, Elspeth and I. Oh, no. Our baby was Tantra Nova. That was our child.
Oh, okay. Now, did you get married before you met Dr. Elizabeth?
I was married before for about 2 years, and we never had kids.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have children.
But I used to be a kid, though.
Well, I think you still are a kid. Sorry, but you've got that very youthful energy. So, Dr. Elspeth, your past. Did you know that you were going to be doing this and married to a man who obviously is a different heritage background?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If you had known me 25 years ago and would have told me that I would be sitting here with Freddie talking about Tantra and harnessing sexual energy, I would have said to you, Dr. Marissa, you are out of your mind. I was a management consultant at that time. So as we already talked about, I grew up in Germany. I came in my late 20s to the United States to do postgraduate work in music. And then a few years later, I got my doctorate in education. And from there, I moved into consulting. And that was in the 90s. I had gotten really good at consulting. However, I was really despaired in terms of intimate relationships. I had this pattern of attracting unavailable men. And while that was exciting at times, most of the time I was alone. And there came this, moment where I saw the trajectory right in front of me. If I were not going to change that pattern of attracting unavailability, that I would end up without lasting intimacy and love in my life before I leave this planet. And I did not want to settle for that. And that was the time when I said, okay, Elspeth, whatever you need to do in order to clear what's in the way, do it. And that took me to, delve deeply into the tantric practice like a discipline, not just like reading a book here and there. And, it was so life-changing. What I discovered through the tantric healing process was that I had held distrust towards men. I had no clue. I was very charming. I reeled the guys in. I was inviting. But underneath the conscious, in the subconscious, something was running. And we cannot figure it out with our conscious mind because it's not visible. However, when we tap into our energetic self through the sexual energy access, the emotional body, in that altered state, stuff may show up that was not accessible before. And what came along with it was the memory of when I was 18 years old. First boyfriend, first love. We had a very blissful relationship. And then one day he asked me to have intercourse. And I said yes, although I was not ready. It was freakingly painful. I had to go to the gynecologist. The bill from the gynecologist went to my house. My father opened it, all hell broke loose. He called me a whore. The boyfriend left the relationship a few weeks later, and there I was all by myself, no soul to turn to. And that was that moment of despair when I said to myself, Elspeth, see, men are not there when you really need them. And while that was so at that time, that trailed me into my young adulthood, and no wonder that I attracted unavailable men. That was just further proof that men were not available to me or not there for me when I needed them.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, but subconsciously.
Because on the surface, you said you wanted to be in relationship.
Right. I looked very available, but underneath was like that holding back because it's not safe, that not trusting. So what opened up through the healing ritual was letting this go, like opening, a valve when the steam gets more intense. So the pain, the emotional and physical pain from the 18-year-old came back, expanded, and then fizzled out. And in place, what opened up was deeper trust in myself, then trust in men in general. And then guess what? 6 months later, Freddie Central came into my life. And if I had not done that work, I would not have recognized him as a potential partner. I would have seen him. He's tall. He looks like a basketball player, but not that underneath if I had not done that clearing work. So I often encourage people who come to us as singles who think, oh, I have to have a partner to do this work. No. Do your own clearing work so that you ready yourself for attracting that partner you want to be with, so you can really meet each other versus, being like this.
Yes. So there's self-tantra work?
Yeah, there's a self-love practice. Yeah. So what we're teaching doesn't replace the other things we do in sex and with each other and with ourselves. And there is a self-love practice that we teach in addition to a mutual practice that you do with another person that is a construct. There's a construct, like there are roles that are given in the construct of the meditation.
Yeah, let's go back to the solo practice because that is just what you got curious about. That it always starts with ourselves anyway. If I'm not intimately connected with myself, I cannot connect intimately with Freddie. It's not possible. We often look outside to get that intimate connection. Look over here. Like when I'm angry with Freddie, the last thing that I want is to be intimate with him. I'm so resistant. He's wrong. I'm right, of course, So if I want to act, if I'm committed to harmony in the relationship, I want to shift myself over here. And that is just as we can do this emotionally, we can also do this with our sexual intimacy. And it really goes hand in hand that our sex and our heart becomes integrated. They are of different frequency, of different nature, yet they complement each other very well. And if I live more in my sex as a way of relating and connecting, even with myself, I'm just in one dimension. Or if I'm all emotion and get lost in it and feel sorry for myself, that's just another way of being lopsided. So by reintegrating our sexual creative self with our love self, with our mental and spiritual self, and we can literally practice this with moving, channeling the energy that runs through us all the time. So what I'm saying doesn't just happen when I'm in self-love practice. Energy, life force energy, emanates from the base of the spine and moves up in a serpentine way to the top of the head on the inhalation and back down in a serpentine way on the exhalation. It does this all the time. You can think of it like an analogy like blood flow. We are not aware of our blood flow, but it moves through us all the time. And as the veins and the arteries are the grid for blood flow, the nervous system is the grid for energy flow. So we want to become more familiar with our sensations, what we sense in our body that are indicators of where we are with our energy.
Yes.
There's two things I just want to break in for a second. First, I have to do a
Please.
station ID.
Oh, yeah.
If you just tuned in and you're wondering what's going on in studio today, welcome to Take My Advice. I'm not using a hip bounce with Dr. Marissa, the morning show on KZAA, home to the Asian Oprah, celebrating 25 years. Actually, I'm celebrating 607 consecutive weeks on the air, on camera, and it is the station that leaves no listener behind. You can get it not just on AM, FM, but everywhere. iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and of course, my YouTube channel, where if you free subscribe, you will get a show alert every weekday morning when I splatter you with more hope and happiness. And today we have a very special guest in studio. It is a married couple who is sort of really shifting the way we're looking at sex. And if I look at the way I was brought up, very religious, sex is bad, evil. The church said necking, only kisses above the neck were okay until you get married. And so obviously my first time, like yours, was not good. My immediate, after it happened, and it was not even 3 seconds, by the way, it was 0 seconds for me, and it was probably 1 second for him. So I resembled and I resonated with what you said. I think that at that point on, the pain began, and it did not, it's still there. And what shifted for me, thank you very much, is I thought I've had to heal this in order to have good sex. And what I'm realizing from what you're saying is I can heal this using sex to move towards feeling like I'm desirable and I am good enough for that. So that's a huge thing. But I do want to address that whole sex is bad, sex is evil, sex is dirty, and put that loose on the table. Because when I first heard about Tantra, I'm like, oh, wow, that's like hedonism, right? We go from not talking about sex and sex is dirty to sex is good, sex is spiritual, sex is, something you want to do all the time. And you don't go to work, that is your work. So help me balance this understanding, which you're doing already. But I think for anyone who's listening,
to further it, yes.
Who was brought up like me.
Yes, Tantra is a lot of things. There are many variations of Tantra, but In all, Tantra is one of the original yogas of the energetic body, unlike Hatha yoga of the physical form, which most of us are familiar with. And it's got its dogma as well. You know, one of the things we are doing with Tantra Nova, Tantra New, is we're integrating the energetic yoga of working consciously with sexual energy and some of the approaches to transformation that we know in the West in terms of generative language, how we create our reality in language, creative self-discovery, how we discover ourselves in the creative process of music and movement and art. And we've created our own gestalt, and we have been doing these workshops all over the world for the last 22 years. And in none of our workshops is there any nudity, so we've designed it so it's comfortable for people. The very intimate practices we teach with puppets and clothes, but you really get the sense of it, and you do the intimate practices in your own space between the first day, second day, third day. So, you know, it's a safe space for people to approach some of these concepts and experiences so that they can get it themselves. I say anybody in a body can get this that's willing. It's not we're teaching you anything. We're reminding you of something you've forgotten.
Dr. Elspeth, you were going to say something.
Yes. So, and we call what we do Tantra Nova, the new Tantra, because it is a combination of the Eastern traditions and Western technology, and then really creating it in a way that it's applicable to who we are today at this time and age. And I want to harken back to what you brought up about the vilification of that sexual energy, you know, like having sex is sinful, bad, not until you are married. And then when I'm married, is it someone else's energy? No, it always has been my energy. And particularly feminine sexual energy has been vilified. It's different with male sexual energy. You know, playboy, harems, the teenage...
Polyamorous or polygamy.
All kinds of expressions. You know, actually, the teenage boy coming home to his dad, telling him that he had sex, gets a high five from his dad, and then, you know, now you're a man, and here are a few rubbers.
Yeah.
The girl, I would never have gone to my mother and told her, you know, when I had sex for the first time as a teenager. Because there is like something also, you know, you are no marriage material anymore. It's impure.
Mm-hmm.
There are places...
Chinese the same. When my mother found the birth control pills, Lord Almighty, it was that same reaction of fighting the gynecology bill. So, yeah, it was horrible. Yeah, so it's no wonder I don't have satisfying sex. I still to this day, you know, am uncomfortable with receiving. And it is that, you know, they try, and then I pull them up by the ears and say, it's okay, you know, it's your turn, sort of thing. And I realize that that is something I need to work on. So, because this is my show, you've heard enough of my experience, and I'm sure you've worked with, what would be, besides going to your workshop, what is something that I could do to begin to shift and heal myself using Tantra Nova?
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
So, you know, we have this gift for the audience that I don't know if you saw it.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
It's called an introduction to sexual meditation. I actually would recommend that you watch the video. I mean, of course, everyone who is listening, it's a great gift, because we thought out of this conversation, you know, all of you who are listening may be curious. So, okay, now what's the next step?
This is the Asian Oprah giveaway. So tell us how to get it.
And that gift really introduces you to some of the foundational practices that without these practices, you cannot take it to a higher level of transmuting your orgasmic energy. And so that may be a first step to just, you know, learn to listen to yourself more, because this one practice is about listening to our energetic self, what we sense, how we feel. Sometimes even the listening can be confronting. like it's uncomfortable to listen to ourselves in a deeper way.
What? What?
However, if we don't move towards it, there is no other side. It's just if I don't move through the eye of the needle, I cannot see what's on the other side. So that, I would say, would be a first step. And then you mentioned receiving, which is at the very, center of actually experiencing pleasure. Because when we receive, we are open. However, what receiving calls for as well is trusting. And I even in my women's workshop where that I call Awaken to Your Feminine Essence.
That'd be a good one for you, Doc.
We also do. I also work privately with women one-on-one. But anyway, there is this self-love practice that some women get confronted with to be with themselves for an extended amount of time. I'm talking about 45 minutes or an hour, just to be with myself, treating myself like I was the beloved that I so desire, who would listen to myself, who would touch me in a way that just feels so right.
Being your own lover.
Being my own lover to my own beloved. So I get to experience both the giving and the receiving. And in the process, I want to open up. I want to relax into it. Some women get very confronted with it. They say, I've never been that a long time with myself in that way. Other women come back and say, I didn't even know that I could have so much pleasure for a long time without even coming to climax. It's like being in the orgasmic ether, or, and it's a cultivation, it's a listening to ourselves. So it's partly dropping into ourselves and opening ourselves to ourselves, trusting myself. And then, of course, then there is partner work. And as I shared with you earlier, when I delved into the tantric practice, I went solo. So I worked with a practice partner, that will open up other things, because in the dynamic of the masculine and feminine, things get triggered, you know? And so, but it's such a wonderful opportunity, because you can also look at it, that's like a laboratory. My body doesn't know the difference between a lover and, a practice partner.
Now, we do offer, so we have the co-ed practice or workshops, women's workshops and men's workshops. And for men, it's learning how to become more conscious of this unconscious aspect of ourselves. So really what you want, Doc, is a tantra person. You want a tantra lover. That's what you need.
That was what? That could be you?
Well, I don't know if it'd be me, but
I thought that's what you said. That's why I went, what?
Yeah, no. Some of the people who've been doing these practices are the types of people you want to bring into your life, because they are accustomed, particularly men, because for most of us guys, we start out the guy with the little kid with the little erection, ma, look, no hands, and then as adults, we're run by our little heads our whole life. So one of the primary edicts for the man is learning to separate ejaculation from orgasm, and in that practice, he gets in touch with how unconscious this aspect of our energy is, because it's one of the few places that men are able to feel intimate, connected, tender, and loving, because there's two emotions that were modeled and that are kind of indicated that are okay for us, and that's fucking or fighting for men in our regular world. So
I forgot to tell you, we're under FCC regulations, so we can't use words like that.
Okay.
Frank, I hope you caught that.
Got it. Sorry about that.
That's a $20,000 fine for me.
Really? Okay. So for guys, it's learning to become more conscious in this part of their life. And in the process of separating ejaculation from orgasm, we start to see how this energy has us, in terms of, is it big enough, too small, too hard, hard enough, not hard enough, love, falling in love, am I worthy, jealousy, possessiveness, all of it's loaded. So once we start listening from that place, we can start to learn to move that energy to our heart. And then once we start to do that, particularly with a woman, then her heart opens. She can trust then. We aren't coming at them in a seemingly lusting way. So that's a big part of what happens for men.
Got it. So let's go back to the giveaway before I forget, because people are asking me right now, what are they getting for the Asian Oprah giveaway and how do they get it?
Yeah, so I sent you the link a couple of days ago.
Yes, you did. And I was hoping you could just tell me that's why I pulled up your website. But I'll find it.
Yeah,
Mhm,
because
resend it.
it's a long,
Is it? Okay.
opt-in page, so it's a little bit more difficult. It's more long.
Yes, I'll find it.
Can you put it in the show notes?
Yes, I will. For sure. I think I could probably pull it up now. But so you're saying that what is important for me, is it possible for me to go to a workshop and a mixed workshop that has Freddie, like you're advertising guys who actually practice this and kill two birds with one stone?
Yeah.
Sorry.
We definitely would pair you with someone who is experienced. So we also train people. So we have students who have gone through our mastery program and certification program who then assist in the workshop. So yes, of course, there will be whoever comes by themselves will be paired with a practice partner. And the practice partner is not to fall in love with or to have sex with. That's not the purpose. The practice partner is there, or both of you are there to support each other in your own evolution. Whatever your intention is for why you're coming to this workshop, to realize that. And what the beauty is, working with a partner, actually, it's the same for a committed couple. The two people come together, it's the same principle, is that out of doing the work together, that things open up by learning in action. We don't just talk about it. No, you get to do practices. Stuff comes up. You get coached in the moment or supported in the moment so that your nervous system can shift in the moment. And a new way of receiving opens up. And then if there's something underneath, which I, have a strong hunch about you, is that there's something around trusting, fundamental.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm getting the 1 minute. Somehow I missed the countdown. I knew this was going to happen. We're having such a good time. Thank you so much for coming on the show and helping me with my own healing. I wasn't expecting that, but thank you for the work you do.